Hi, I'm Rebecca with Monit's Vocal Studio. Let's check in.
You get infinitely more no's than you get yeses. And for me, it was a learning process because when I first got in theater, like I had a lot of yeses. I started getting roles very quickly, and they seemed to come very easily. And so when I started getting no's, it was a very big like, what's wrong with me? Like I'm losing it. I'm doing something wrong.
Hi, I'm Rebecca with Monit's Vocal Studio, and today's interview features Micah Hanson, an actor based out of Coeur d'Alene. She's incredibly talented, kind, humble, and I know you'll be inspired by this interview. Also, make sure to check in the description box below if you're watching on the YouTube platform to learn a little more about Micah. Enjoy. Hey, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for being a part of
Oh
this.
my gosh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's exciting. So, Micah, for those that don't know you, would you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you do, and more about you as a person?
Yeah, so I was raised up in the Northwest in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is where I've met you, obviously. And started in musical theater when I was about 16, I think was my very first show, and just absolutely fell in love. It was like the first thing in my life that just like made sense. And there was no reason it should. I was like the most awkward, shy homeschooler you can possibly imagine. And so the fact that like getting on stage made sense to me somehow, and I just knew how to do it, like doesn't make sense. But I just fell in love and got involved with such a good group of people up here in the Northwest, and just never looked back. I moved to Nashville in 2013 to pursue film. I knew as soon as I started theater, I always knew I really wanted to do film. And there just isn't a ton of it up in the Northwest, or wasn't at the time. And so I knew the Southeast was kind of just a good area for like upcoming area for like indie film. And I was like, okay, I could go there and just like try it out, see if I like it, see if I'm any good at it, before trying to go someplace like LA, for instance, or New York, where you're like, you know, the tiniest minnow in the ocean. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I went down to Nashville. I was there for about 7 years, and was able to get involved in film, and loved it, absolutely loved it. And just kept plowing ahead. And then, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm mainly focused on film and television. So, although I do want to get back to my original love, which was musical theater, of course.
Yes, yes. And so, for those who've been on stage, who have not been a part of film, television, or behind the camera, or in front of the camera, it's a
Yeah.
very different medium, isn't it?
Oh,
It's so
yes.
different. How would you describe the difference between being on stage and being in front of a camera?
Um, Everyone always told me like film is much smaller, and I think that was the worst advice I ever got. Like the least helpful thing I ever got, because like when I was trying to transition from stage to film, I would just try to get like quieter, and like that's not it. That's not what it is. I would say that film is more technical. There's a lot more that you have to be able to block out, in my opinion, anyways. Theater, you've rehearsed it so much and you've done it the same way, and you go and you go and you go, and then you perform. And with film, you don't get rehearsal, and you have to be very technical in the sense that if you are off just, you know, just a tiny bit from your mark, you have to hit your mark at the right place at the right time. Continuity is much more important. There's just a lot more technical aspects to it. And you do also have to balance all this technicality with also being so much more, not more, I don't want to say more real, that's not it. But on stage, you can get away with being bigger, being
Right.
big, being loud, being not as realistic as maybe real life would be, obviously. And film, the camera sees that, you know, and so
Right.
it's so much subtlety that you have to be able to master while also being so technical. Yeah, that to me is the biggest difference. Is it's a lot of little details that make a huge difference on screen, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And I remember doing a musical once with an actor. He was in the show. They brought him in, and he'd done a lot of film, and a lot of TV shows. And so he's a face that people would recognize, and he
Yeah.
hadn't done a lot of theater. And so he was in our musical, and he'd be in the middle of a scene, and we're getting close because I think we put up the show in maybe 2.5 weeks or something like that. And,
wow.
and so it was a big one. And he kept yelling, "Cut." And the director would go, "No, you have to get ready to keep it going, because if you forget a line, we're not going to stop and go back."
Right.
And he even, because I would hear him on the phone talking to people and going, "Oh my gosh, this is kind of spooky." And so, it was, so I thought, it is different. So for people that don't know some of the things that you've been in, what are some of the things that you've been a part of so far as an actor?
I've gotten pretty involved in the faith-based industry, actually, as far as like film goes. It wasn't necessarily by choice, but it's been a wonderful pathway for me, So I've been involved with like the Kendrick brothers, some of their things. I have a film on Netflix right now called like Arrows, which was produced by them. And then I've been on the TV show Nashville, just as a small day player role, but it was just fun to live in Nashville and be part of the show, and all of that was really exciting. I just finished wrapping up a Christmas film up here in the Northwest, which will hopefully be out next Christmas season. And then there's a production, it's like a 6-part mini series called Washington's Armor, that is about the young George Washington. Which is just a beautiful project. We're in the process of still filming that. COVID kind of ruined a few things this year for us artists. But yeah, those are some of the bigger things that I've been a part of that I've just loved getting to be a part of. So
what do you think has prepared you for those jobs from, if you look back on your journey so far?
It's a really good question. I think having a foundation in theater is the best thing you can do as an actor. I think it's so important. I think it really makes you a better performer, and a more flexible performer. You have to be able to go with the flow on set, just as much, if not more so, in theater. Well, that's not entirely true, but you have to be very flexible in the sense that like you're going to be shooting this scene and then maybe it starts raining and you have to go to a completely different scene and just be able to like jump in and just go, So I think theater has helped me so much. For me, like my faith is huge and a very big part of my life. Honestly, having a therapist has been the best thing that has helped me in my career. I wish I would have gotten in with a therapist much younger. I believe it was Meisner, Stanford Meisner. There's a quote by him that says, "We become better actors when we become better people." And I have found that to be so true. Like there was a phase in my life where I was going through, as Anne Shirley would say, the depths of despair. And I really didn't know if I would ever act again. I was like, I'm either going to come out on the other side of this and I won't be able to touch acting ever again, or I will come out on the other side of this and be a much better actor. Because I was digging in and figuring out what was wrong and healing traumas and letting, for me, Jesus come in and heal those broken places of me. And I was like, I just don't know if I'll ever be able to do it again. Like, I just don't think I can. But now that I'm kind of through that healing process, I feel like I'm a much better human. And I do feel like that translates vastly into my acting. And I've gotten bigger roles since then that I feel like I can actually tackle now. I think for a long time, I was really good at just acting and putting up a front and putting on the character. And now I'm confident enough to actually be vulnerable, like truly vulnerable on screen or in person. And in real life, emotions, they still scare me. My therapist has always laughed saying that. She's like, with how terrified you are of emotions, I find it very interesting that you went into acting. So emotions still terrify me, but I have the courage to still to face them now and face them vulnerably and authentically. And there's nothing more beautiful than on screen and on stage than to see humans really struggling with real emotions. I think that's what people connect to. And that's why we love the arts as humans.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you shared the part about seeing a therapist. I totally believe in that and how powerful it is to face your stuff. I say this all the time. It takes courage to face your stuff.
Oh man.
right?
Scariest thing I ever did. Yeah.
It's scary, but then it's worth it because then
Yeah.
you're, I say the ones that do and go through it and come through the other side were unicorns. Powerful, right? It's
It
powerful
is.
stuff.
It really
It's
is.
amazing. So
Yeah.
a lot of people that I talk to that are in the industry, especially Los Angeles, will say it can be challenging to have a core group of people that you can really show up with and trust that have
Yeah.
similar values. Did you navigate that at all?
I was only in LA for such a small amount of time because COVID hit, and then I
Yeah.
didn't want to stay in the city through all of this. So, but thankfully, I felt like I had a pretty amazing group of people there already
Oh, good.
that I was able to kind of jump in with. I think what is really important is as soon as you get there, I got this advice actually when I had moved to Nashville. I had a friend who had moved a lot in her life, and she said there seems to be this window of time, like when you first move, where you have to go out. You're not going to want to. You're not going to feel like it because you're going through a lot emotionally, leaving something, being somewhere new, and all of that. But just every time anybody asks you to do anything, obviously if you're comfortable with it, like go, do it, show up. Because otherwise there's just this window of time where people won't ask you anymore. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important, like when you first get somewhere, like I'm not an extrovert. I'm very much an introvert. So for me to, anytime somebody's like, hey, I think you should meet this person, or, oh my gosh, you should come to this or whatever, I'd be like, oh, I'm still kind of unpacking, or I'm still just like emotionally missing this or that, and it was just like, just go, just do it. And I'm very grateful for that. So, and the other wonderful thing is that we do have social media now where you can find groups of, things that you're interested in, or causes that you that resonate with you, or whatever it may be. A lot of times you can find community through that as well, where people meet up when they do things like that. So
That's good. So important to
yeah.
have that support. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that a lot of people, they might see you in a movie or on a stage somewhere and just assume that you just land every role that you've ever gone for. And we talk all the time about how auditions are, you hear a lot of no's, right?
Oh yeah. That's the hardest thing in this industry is the no's. I mean, you get infinitely more no's than you get yeses. And for me, it was a learning process because when I first got in theater, like I had a lot of yeses. I started getting roles very quickly, and they seemed to come very easily. And so when I started getting no's, it was a very big, like, what's wrong with me? Like I'm losing it. I'm doing something wrong. And it's not that. It really isn't. And no matter how much somebody tells you, like, it's okay, or this happens to everybody, it's just gonna suck. Like nothing makes it feel better. The thing that does help me sometimes is knowing that, like, okay, if they're looking for an apple and you are an orange, there's nothing wrong. You're a great orange. Maybe like you're the best, most delicious orange ever, but they don't need an orange. They need an apple for this recipe, So that does help, just remembering that you aren't for everyone and you're not for every role. And there's been some roles where I was like, this is my role. I know it. I'm perfect for this. And I did not get it. And it was absolutely, it's hard. It's so soul crushing. Just for me, I have to remind myself, and I will literally go back and read like the 5 like phases of the grieving process, because I very much grieve every single role. And I have to remind myself and be there for myself and be like, okay, it's okay. Like it meant something to you, and it's okay that it meant something to you. And I'm also a big proponent of Brene Brown's work.
Yeah.
And she talks about how vocalizing, because I used to never tell anybody if I was excited about something, whether it was a role or maybe a boy or what, like I just was like, didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to be embarrassed if it didn't happen. Like disappointment to me was like the biggest embarrassment. And now I'm the opposite, where I probably overshare sometimes. But I just realized like nobody can be there for you if they don't know you were excited about it, Yeah. So for me, there's been roles where I was like very vocal with, whether it was my family or fellow actors or whatever, like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. Like, I just know it, like this is it, or whatever. And when it didn't happen, people were like, would check in and be like, are you okay? Like, and like you have people there for you when they know that something meant something to you, as opposed to just playing it tough and being like, oh, it's fine. Like then they're not going to care. And then you're going to be hurt that they don't care. And you're not, like it just,
Yes.
I always just try to be so big and tough and brave. And now I'm like, I'm not. I'm a pathetic little mess most of the time, and I'm okay with that.
Well, it takes courage to be vulnerable. It
It
takes so
really
much
does.
courage to let people know where you're really at. And what's funny is so many people walk around with that same sense of, I don't want people to really know how I'm feeling. I'll put up the stoic thing that we do. And that is powerful. I remember when she shared that, I was listening to one of her books on Audible, and I
Yeah.
stopped the car and I said, I need to rewind that and listen to that again. Cause I was the same way for so long. I think I still am to a certain extent.
Oh,
I'm
I
very good at
100%
letting
am.
people in to my stuff.
Oh, it's hard. It's so hard.
It is. It's hard to be vulnerable. So I have this next question for you. So when was the first time that you got a role or a part, anything, the first time you just went, oh my gosh, I'm going to jump out of my skin with excitement and I need to go celebrate and scream it off the rooftops?
Oh man. I mean, I think it had to be, I got cast as Belle in Beauty and the Beast. That was my third show ever, I think. And it was at CYT in Spokane. I was just so excited. But honestly, I kind of get that way with almost every single role I get. In the film world, I got cast as Martha Washington and just lost my mind. Like,
Yeah.
couldn't even handle it. And then again, like I got to come up here to the Northwest and shoot a Christmas film.
Yeah.
And that to me was like just mind blowing. I was like, I'm getting paid to go home. I'm getting paid to go live at home and shoot a movie in my hometown, like
I love that.
it just, there's so many different ways that you can get excited about it, whether it's the role or the story or just the environment or the people you get to work with. Like, man, it's just, yeah. It's fun.
Well, Micah, I just have to say that you are a breath of fresh air, really. Like even just when you reached out for just to do a quick lesson before, just a little brush up on some singing. I remember thinking how refreshing and how humble and kind and authentic you are. You really do have that presence about you. It's not like you're practicing it. You are living that. I thought you're the real deal, and it means so much. That's why I wanted to interview you. That's the kind of people I want to interview on this channel is real people who are living it out, because what that means is it gives other people permission to show up and do the same thing. Because I think a lot of people are walking on the planet hiding themselves. We don't show up, right?
Yep.
And so when they see people doing that, they go, well, I guess I can too. So that's big, Micah. You're making a difference in the world.
Thank you. Seriously, that means more to me than any kind of like, oh, I loved you in this, or you're performing in that. Like that means so much because it is so important to me. And I wish I would have had people like that in my life when I was younger, because I didn't see that, like you said, so many people are walking around so tough and just pretending things don't bother them, or, and I didn't know what it meant to be vulnerable, and I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn through a lot of trial and error. I've mentioned it before, but like I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2015. And I know for me, that was because I had held so much in and so much stress. Like I gave myself an illness, like I'm not saying that's everybody's case, but I know in my case, like I just held everything in and wouldn't express anything real because I didn't know how somebody was going to take it, because it is vulnerable. And vulnerability, I truly think, is the scariest thing on the planet, and we need more people who can be vulnerable, because you can't have good leaders without vulnerability. You can't have good teachers without vulnerability. You can't have good performers without vulnerability. Like it's everything.
It is. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was a public school teacher was it's okay to make mistakes in front of your students and then go back and make it right. Whether it was, I wrote that out incorrectly. Sorry, guys. Or I played the wrong note when I was teaching you the song too. I was kind of a jerk yesterday. It's like we have our moments and they need to see that so that it then gives them permission.
Oh my gosh.
We can make mistakes. The Make Big Mistakes video, that was so cool. I had so many people that watched that and said that it made a difference. And I do have a couple more questions for you. One of them is, what is your strength as a performer?
I think I work very hard to find the truth in the scene or in a situation. For me, I have to make it feel right in me, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
if I believe it myself, then I feel like the camera will believe it as well.
Yeah.
So for me, it's finding, and it's hard sometimes. It's really hard. There's some lines that you're like, oh, I would never say it this way, or like, oh, I would never do that, or how can I make that make sense? So for me, I think it's taking the time to wrestle through saying it a million different ways to yourself in the mirror if you need to, or just digging in and figuring out why this character would say this or whatever. But I think it's finding the truth in it. Even if I don't believe it, even if I think it sounds dumb, finding a way to make it true, at least for that split second, like find the truth and make yourself believe it, even if it's just so the camera catches it and then they say cut and you roll your eyes and are like, I hated that. But like finding the truth, I think, is what I would say would be my strength.
That's excellent. So for the student or I'd say like I work with a lot of high school and early college age students that are interested in pursuing the performing arts. And I know that the world today is a little crazy, but
Yeah.
hopefully we can get back to some sense of what we had before. But
Yes.
if ever it's possible, or where we're at even now, any words of wisdom to those people that are coming up, want to pursue a performing, they want to pursue it as their career. Any advice to those people?
My advice to anybody who wants to be in this is, I'm going to assume, and it's a generalization, but a lot of people who are in the arts or interested in the arts are very sensitive and also very wounded people. I know I am, and I was, and have been. I don't really have any advice as far as the industry goes, but my advice is like, know who you are, find out who you are, take the time to be gracious with yourself, get a therapist, whatever you need to do to heal and be safe with yourself. At the end of the day, the only thing we're guaranteed in this whole life is that we have to live with ourselves our whole life, and so learn how to be kind to yourself, learn how to be your biggest cheerleader, take the time and the courage to sit in the discomfort, whatever that is for you. If it's childhood trauma, if it's whatever you've been through, like take the time to take care of yourself, because you can't pour out of an empty glass. You can't help other people. You can't help your director. You can't help the character. You can't do anything if you don't have something to give from, like a well to give from. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that is my biggest suggestion, is just to learn how to love and take care of yourself in a very genuine, real way, and have good people around you. Not yes men. Don't get people who will just puff up your ego and be like, oh, you're great, you're this, you're that. Like people who love you and will speak truth to you. If you're messing up, they'll call you out. Like, I know it's not comfortable, but keep those people around you. The ones who love you and do it out of love, not out of jealousy or anything like that. So
yeah, that's really helpful. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time, Micah. I know that I have students and other people who just watch these interviews because they're interested in what we've got to say and what we've got to share. I know it's going to help a lot of people. And so thank you for taking the time, and you are going to inspire some of my students and others, and I really appreciate it.
Aw, well, I hope so. And please let them know, like, they can reach out, chat, whatever, social media, all of those things. So,
okay. Well, thank you again, Micah. I hope you have a beautiful day, and you take care.
Okay, you too.
Thanks, Micah.
Bye.